Female lead stunning+Double Cleanliness+System giving birth+Gong Dou Shuangwen+Quick wear+No fixed CPMeng Wenyao died in her sleep and unexpectedly obtained the birth system. Completing the birth task can extend her lifespan. World 1. Inhumane Emperors, Double Cleanliness. In the battle for the throne, the emperor injured his body with ice water to protect himself. When he saw a woman rushing towards him like a wolf, the emperor's body showed no reaction. The female protagonist's attitude of refusing and welcoming completely conquered the emperor, and from then on, she favored the harem and gave birth to multiple princesWorld too. Emperors poisoned. Shuangjie, the Empress Dowager's parent. Child lost all public support. After supporting the emperor to ascend the throne, she poisoned the emperor and wanted the emperor to adopt the Empress Dowager's biological grandson. When the female lead appeared, she gave birth to a prince, ending the emperor's life of being manipulated. World 3. Chapter 1. The Inhumane Emperor 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Mississippi. Miss, wake up quickly. Meng Wenyao was sleeping in a daze, with a voice constantly calling in her ear, which sounded quite anxious. Did you forget to turn off the TV while sleeping? Meng Wenyao opened a slit in her eyes and slowly adapted to the light. Suddenly, she noticed a head in front of her, crying and laughing, and said, "Miss, you finally woke up. What is the situation? Who is this person?" It was probably a dream, and Meng Wenyao closed her eyes with peace of mind and continued to sleep. Ding dong, system number 0071 is at your service. What sound? This dream is so strange. Host, you are not dreaming. You died suddenly in your sleep 2 minutes ago. There is now a fertility task, and if you can successfully complete it, you can be resurrected. Meng Wenyao's brain slowly began to spin. Did she die? She stayed up for 3 days and 3 nights, just finished the plan book, slept for a while, and then died. What if I don't take on this task? What's the plan for having a child? She didn't even have a romantic relationship. What kind of child would she have? If you don't take on the task, you will have to reincarnate, isn't that right? She worked hard and was as tired as a donkey in the production team. After finally earning some money, she died like this. She hasn't fully enjoyed it yet. How could she die like this? At least she needs to spend all her money before dying. What do you mean by the task you just said? Meng Wenyao decided to give this system a chance. It's like this, host. As long as you help the target character give birth, you can receive rewards and extend their lifespan. It's easy. We have many auxiliary tools in our store to help you, ensuring that you can easily complete it. Well, it sounds very easy. Give it a try. After all, there are no other options now. Meng Wenyao really doesn't want to die. Can you introduce this task and how you can help me complete it? Okay, our birth control system will send you to the target character's world, and you will also receive information from that world. Then you just need to help the target character give birth to a child. Our mall will give you many tools. You can use your beginner points to purchase. As soon as Meng Wenyao finished speaking, she saw something similar to a shopping mall appearing in front of her, with 1,000 points in her account. It is indeed a tool that helps with childbirth. Birth pill, 50 points, birth pill, 50 points, multi-child pill, 100 points, twin pills, 100 points, fake pregnancy pill, 50 points, beauty pill, 50 points, beauty pill, 50 points, Kung Fu Dan, 50 points, 100 poisons non-invading pill, 50 points, Yongbao Ping and Dan, 50 points. There are all kinds of pills available in the mall for childbirth, rehabilitation, beauty, etc. Meng Wenyao spent all her points and selected all the possible pills to ensure the smooth and efficient completion of the first task. Host, with so many pills, are you very confident now? A smile climbed onto Meng Wenyao's face, and she nodded in satisfaction. Can you introduce the situation of this world now? In this world, the emperor is already 30 years old and has no children. Your target character is the Emperor. Your soul will pierce through Meng Wenyao, the legitimate daughter of the Grand General's mansion, and I will transmit her memories of her past and present lives to you. Meng Wenyao felt like her mind was about to crack, and a large amount of memories flooded into her mind. In her past life, Meng Wenyao was the legitimate daughter of a great general, and her father and brother loved her very much. Unexpectedly, her stepmother plotted against her and married Wei Quan, the nephew of a noble consort, as a concubine. She was persecuted to death. General Meng and his 2 sons have been stationed at the border for years. When they heard about the mysterious death of their daughter, they were extremely saddened and immediately rushed back from the border to seek revenge for her. The general returned to the capital without an edict, and when they conspired to rebel, Meng Wenyao and his brothers were framed by the noble consort and Jun Wang's faction. As soon as they arrived in the capital, they were sent to prison without seeking revenge, and their death was very tragic. Although it was not Meng Wenyao's personal experience, just having these memories made Meng Wenyao tremble with hatred. She must repay the blood debts of those enemies in her previous life. In this life, Meng Wenyao has not yet been married to Wei Quan as a concubine, so there is still time for everything. After going through the things in her mind, Meng Wenyao slowly opened her eyes and asked, "Mammy, where are we going?" The woman in front of her is Meng Wenyao's wet nurse, who has been her closest person since Meng Wenyao's biological mother's death. Grandma Hua saw that the young lady in her arms had finally woken up completely, and tears couldn't stop flowing. She wiped her eyes and said, "Miss, let's go to Fahua Temple. Don't be afraid, the old slave will fight to the death to protect the young lady." The galloping carriage swayed left and right, and Meng Wenyao sat up from Grandma Hua's arms, unable to recall what had happened before. "Why did we come out of home?" Upon hearing these words, Grandma Hua looked indignant, as if she wanted to eat someone. "It's not Lu Si, that slut, who secretly drugged Miss while the old slave was away. Fortunately, the old slave came back early, otherwise I wouldn't know where Miss would be sent by that slut." Lu Si is the stepmother and aunt of Meng Wenyao. Meng Wenyao's mother is the eldest daughter of the Lu family. After Meng's mother passed away, in order to better take care of the young Meng Wenyao, General Meng married a concubine named Miss Si from the Lu family. After Mrs. Lu, the stepmother, entered the house, she gave birth to a daughter named Meng Wenxian. A few years ago, her children were all young, and Mrs. Lu, the stepmother, treated Meng Wenyao fairly well. For years, I don't know what's going on. Mrs. Lu, the stepmother, sometimes even the people next to her feel scared when she looks at Meng Wenyao. Meng Wenyao recalled her past life. At this time, Lady Lu did indeed prescribe medicine and wanted to knock Meng Wenyao unconscious, secretly taking her to the residence of Wei Quan, the nephew of the noble consort. Wei Quan has already married, and Meng Wenyao can only be a concubine. As the legitimate daughter of a great general, how could she withstand such insults and quickly seek death with all her heart? This kind of thing will never happen again in this life. With the help of the system, Grandma Hua, the wet nurse, returned early and took Meng Wenyao out. She wanted to deal with the enemies of her previous life well. "Mammy, why did we go to Fahua Temple?" The abbot of Fahua Temple and the general are old acquaintances. Before the general goes to the border, he explains that if there are any issues, you can ask the abbot for help. "Let's take shelter there first, and when the general returns, we will uphold justice for the young lady. Never call your father back." In the previous life, my father and brother returned to Beijing without an edict and ended up with a different head. In this lifetime, she holds the secret weapon of giving birth to a son. As long as she gives birth to a prince for the emperor, any noble concubine, Lady Lu, will be killed without the need for her father or brother to come back and help. "Just how did you meet the emperor?" "I heard that the emperor favored Empress Wei only a few years ago, and after many years of childlessness, the Empress Dowager began to advise the emperor to have both rain and dew. The emperor scattered rain and dew in the harem, and selected 2 more ladies. There were no fewer than hundreds of concubines in the harem, and after years of turmoil, none of them became pregnant. In the past 2 years, the emperor has no longer ventured into the harem or been in the draft. In his previous life, the emperor remained like this until his old age, and the throne was passed on to his nephew, Prince Anjuan. Seeing the Fahua temple in front of her, Meng Wenyao suddenly thought of a way to establish a relationship with the emperor. Chapter 2. The Inhumane Emperor 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The emperor has no son, and the Empress Dowager is just as anxious as the emperor. It is said that the Empress Dowager sends maids to Fahua temple to pray for blessings on the 1st and 15th days of each month, hoping that the emperor will have a prince soon. Today happens to be 14, and tomorrow will be 15. As long as the mothers around the Empress Dowager know that Meng Wenyao is someone who can give birth to a prince, the Empress Dowager will give it a try no matter what. Thinking of these, Meng Wenyao suddenly relaxed a lot. Mammy, don't write to your father. It's a capital offense for him to return to Beijing without an edict. As for Lu Si, I can solve it. She won't be around for long. Grandma Hua listened to the resolute tone of the young lady and looked up at her resolute expression. Although she was still the delicate young lady, she had a decisive aura. For a moment, I didn't know why my young lady suddenly changed her temperament. Perhaps she was really the daughter of a general, with a natural imposing aura. Grandma Hua helped Meng Wenyao into Fahua temple and settled down in a room. The day passed quietly. The next morning, Meng Wenyao packed up and inquired about the time when the grandmother next to the Empress Dowager came to offer incense. She was silently waiting. At the end of Chen, there was a mother in solemn clothes who walked into the Sakya-mani hall accompanied by the host. At the end of the day, the mother walked out of the Sakya-mani hall accompanied by the host. Meng Wenyao calmly approached and bowed to the host. Miss Meng had a dream yesterday and wanted to ask the master for clarification. The abbot saw Grandma Hua next to Meng Wenyao and knew her identity. He politely said, Amitabha Buddha, benefactor, please speak. The little girl dreamed last night that many demons and monsters wanted to kill me. Just at the critical moment, a golden dragon saved me. It killed all the demons and monsters and even circled around me. Just as I was about to say thank you, it flew away. I found that my stomach had grown so big, like a pregnant woman. Then I woke up in shock and asked the master to clarify. After finishing these words, Meng Wenyao scanned the nanny in the palace with the end of her eyes. Sure enough, when she heard this, her face changed and her gaze changed. The fish has taken the bait, Menglong fell into her arms, and even if she couldn't understand such a suggestion, she didn't deserve to work as a servant by the Empress Dowager. Amitabha Buddha, benefactor, it's troublesome to disturb your heart. I'll have you recite the clear heart mantra for me. After the abbot finished speaking, he summoned a little monk and led Meng Wenyao to the side hall to listen to the scriptures. The nanny in the palace, after bidding farewell to the host, rushed to the palace in a hurry. She was the most capable nanny by the Empress Dowager's side, managing the affairs of the Changle Palace, big and small. She was also quite strict. As soon as she entered the palace door and saw the eunuch slacking off, she swept past without speaking out to scold. The young eunuch was scanned and stood up smartly in fear. He quickly swept the floor, and when he looked up again, there were no more people. He poked the eunuch next to him and said, "Today, Grandma Gui is in a good mood and hasn't even stopped to scold us." Another eunuch looked up at the sky and said, "The sun is really shining in the west. Grandma Gui seems to have missed us slacking off. What does this mean, that the sun will come out from the west? When the emperor has a son, will the sun come out from the west?" After speaking, the two eunuchs covered their mouths and laughed incessantly. They were incomplete people and couldn't have children. Who would have thought that even the emperor's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards couldn't have children? God is so fair. Grandma Gui didn't hear the teasing of the eunuchs. She didn't even see those 2 eunuchs. She just kept her head down and wanted to see the Empress Dowager quickly. Can't a ghost chase you from behind? As soon as the Empress Dowager finished reciting the Buddhist scriptures, she saw the most dignified Grandma Gui rushing in without touching her feet. Not ghosts, there are immortals. Grandma Gui came to the Empress Dowager and after bowing, she explained in detail what had happened today. The Empress Dowager listened attentively, one moment gripping the Buddha pearl in her hand, and another grabbing Grandma Gui's hand and saying, "Do you know which girl it is?" "Don't worry, madam. I have a clear understanding of the Tao and I am the legitimate daughter of General Meng." The Empress Dowager paused for a moment and said softly, she said she dreamed of a dragon in her arms. She must have given birth to a prince. Could it be that she was not born to the emperor, but to the Prince of Encounty? The current emperor has a biological elder brother who passed away early, leaving behind a son who was conferred the title of Prince of Encounty. The emperor has not had any children for so many years, treating Prince An as his own child, and the court also assumes that Prince An is the next emperor. Grandma Gui didn't expect this situation at all. She was stunned for a moment and said, "Your Majesty's words make sense. The Prince of Encounty is going to be crowned as an adult this year, and he happens to be a perfect match for General Meng's daughter. If they get married, General Meng's daughter will have a child, and in the future, she will be a dragon son and a dragon grandson." The Empress Dowager spun the Buddha's pearl and slowly thought that the emperor was unable to bear children. If the Meng family daughter were allowed to enter the palace, she would not be pregnant, and the dragon sons and grandchildren in her dreams would definitely be gone. Is it possible to marry the Meng family daughter to the Prince of Encounty? The identity is matched, and with the inspiration of this dream, it should not be bad. You can arrange for a guidance nanny to come to Meng Mansion to teach Miss Meng etiquette. Upon hearing the Empress Dowager's faint instructions, Grandma Gui quickly asked, "Does Empress Dowager want the Meng family daughter to enter the palace or marry the Prince of Encounty?" The Empress Dowager closed her eyes and said, "Prince An, please don't speak up for now. Let Grandma teach you a little before we speak." "Yes." Meng Wenyao in the Fahua temple was unaware that the situation had completely deviated from her setting. After listening to the Qingxin mantra all morning, she returned to the Meng mansion with Grandma Hua, waiting for the Empress Dowager to pick her up and enter the palace. Madame Lu heard that Meng Wenyao had returned, and her teeth were itching with hatred. Yesterday, she drugged Meng Wenyao, but unexpectedly, Grandma Hua, who had suddenly returned, discovered her and ran away with her people. Although she is the head of the Meng family, she still respects Meng Wenyao, the eldest daughter, from an old servant to a guard. Therefore, she can only use some covert means and cannot do anything openly. Now that Meng Wenyao has returned to the mansion, she doesn't even have the courage to step forward and can only throw a set of roux-kiln porcelain in her room to relieve her anger. The dowager on the side quickly advised, "Madam, calm down. The day will be long." In recent years, Mrs. Lu, the stepmother, has secured her position as the head of the family, but has found that her daughter, regardless of her appearance and talent, cannot compare to her sister's daughter. Her jealousy can no longer be controlled. She is not as good as her elder sister in everything, and her daughter has to be suppressed by her elder sister's daughter, which makes her so willing. Anyway, her daughter Meng Wenxian must marry 1,000 times better than Meng Wenyao in the future, in order to relieve her unwillingness. Mrs. Lu took a few sips of cold tea, suppressed her anger, and a sneer appeared on the corner of her mouth. "General dotes on my sister, how about doting on my eldest daughter? Unfortunately, it's beyond my reach. I'm not making a living yet. This time it's not possible to send someone off, just do it again. She must send Meng Wenyao out before General Meng returns to the mansion. By then, the ship will be finished, and no one will be weak." Chapter 3. The Inhumane Emperor 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Madame Lu could figure out how to send Meng Wenyao out, a little girl ran over and reported, "Madam, there's a nanny in the palace." "What? Mrs. Lu looked incredulous, wondering which song was being sung in the palace. She quickly welcomed out with Grandma Shi. The nanny from the palace stood proudly in the courtyard, and when she saw Mrs. Lu approaching, she bowed to her with her nostrils facing upwards. Madame Lu almost fainted from anger, rubbed her dizzy head, and smiled apologetically. I don't know what to call Grandma. What's up with coming to the mansion? Madam, there's no need to inquire. Just take me to the young lady's place, said the mother coldly. After standing awkwardly for a while, Mrs. Lu tried several times to inquire about something, but did not receive any response. She had to take her grandmother to find the young lady. The nanny in the palace saw Meng Wenyao and immediately looked like a different person, with a warm smile on her face. She said, I have seen Miss Meng, and I have been ordered by the Empress Dowager to come and teach her some etiquette. Mrs. Lu, standing on the side, heard Li Mama's flattering voice and was so angry that she almost couldn't stop. She was also the head of the Meng mansion, how could she be so ignored? Just as she was about to speak, Meng Wenyao spoke slowly and said, Grandma, you're welcome. Hurry up and serve Grandma tea. I'll be working hard from now on. After speaking, he turned to Lu Fu and said, Please ask your mother to take care of Li Mama's clothing, food, housing, and transportation. Don't let Mama feel any discomfort. Li Mama smiled while holding tea and said, Thank you very much, Mississippi. I will do my best to teach Mississippi. Lu Fu was so popular that she trembled all over. She was the head of the household, not the housekeeper. Meng Wenyao dared to manipulate her like this. And this Li Mama, surprisingly, only thanks Meng Wenyao, completely treating her as non-existent. After adjusting her breathing, Mrs. Lu smiled appropriately and said, Li Mama is a noble and humble person. Our Meng mansion is full of splendor. If there is any mishandling, please don't be polite and let Yao Er tell me. Mrs. Lu kept looking at Li Mama while speaking, and after speaking for a while, she didn't even receive a thank you from Li Mama. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand and was about to speak again. Meng Wenyao said lightly, Then it's hard for my mother, and then lowered her head to drink tea. Lu Fu only realized that she had been here for a long time without anyone serving her tea. In a fit of anger, he shook his hand and left. She must make Meng Wenyao a concubine, and she can no longer put on the airs of a high lady. Meng Wenyao talked to Li Mama for a while, and the room over there was cleaned up. She personally led someone to settle Li Mama, and Meng Wenyao finally felt relieved. The Empress Dowager sent someone to teach her etiquette, which implied that she was about to enter the palace. She didn't know how many days she needed to learn etiquette, but before that, she had to deal with some things. Mammy, do you know who the lady instructed to give me the medicine? Meng Wenyao's eyes showed a cold expression. After thinking for a while, Hua Mama had no idea and said in frustration, I have something to do at home these days and I'm not in the mansion. Miss Ru Xin Rui and the two maids are closest to me. Why don't you ask them? Meng Wenyao sneered, what if it were either of them? With a pat on her thigh, Grandma Hua exclaimed, I've been so busy these past few days that my mind can't even move. The one who can prescribe medicine for Miss must be someone close to me. Who else is there besides the two of them? In the previous life, Meng Wenyao was sent to the Wei mansion as a concubine. Ruxin had been with her all the way, and as for Rui, it is said that she married the son of Shi Mama, who was next to her wife. I don't know when this hoof hooked up with Granny Shi. I can only dream of living under her so easily in this lifetime. If Miss knows who it is, how will she handle it? Grandma Hua asked softly. She betrayed me. If I only sold her, it would be too cheap for her. In her previous life, she was sent to be a concubine, and Rui was the most crucial person. Without her secret help, how could Meng Wenyao be easily sent out? Having done such a malicious thing, just selling it and letting her continue to live freely, I am sorry for the sincerity of the system in helping her. In the main room, Meng Wenxian had already heard the arrival of a nanny in the palace. She quickly found Lady Lu and pounced on her, coquettishly saying, "Mother, why does the nanny in the palace have to be sent to her sister? Am I not your biological daughter?" Madame Lu affectionately touched Meng Wenxian's head and said with reluctance, "I also want to send my grandmother to your place, but it was assigned by the Empress Dowager to teach your eldest sister." "What?" Meng Wenxian suddenly stood up and almost pushed Lady Lu down, unable to speak up. Why did the Empress Dowager assign a nanny to her sister? Does she want her sister to enter the palace? Madame Lu helped the hairpin that had been crooked by her daughter and said with concern, "When the Empress Dowager sends someone to the Emperor, whenever she has sent a teacher to guide a nanny, she will directly send someone to the dragon bed. This time, the solemn sending of a teacher to guide a nanny is likely to be intended for formal marriage. Gift of marriage. So the eldest sister won't be a concubine anymore. Your esteemed consort's nephew is interested in the eldest sister and has been urging his mother to send her over. If her mother doesn't send her over, isn't she offending your esteemed consort? Madame Lu is also worried. Empress Wei favored the harem alone, and even the previous dynasty could cover the sky with one hand. If she offended her, she would either be dismissed from office or have her family stolen. She also saw the power of the noble consort and deliberately let her nephew Wei Quan see Meng Wenyao. She pushed the boat and sent Meng Wenyao into the Wei mansion. General Meng will come back when the time comes. She is crying and complaining that she dare not offend the noble concubine. She had no choice but to send Meng Wenyao as a concubine, and this matter can be perfectly resolved. Now that the Empress Dowager has sent a nanny over, how should we handle it? Sending Meng Wenyao to the Wei mansion offended the Empress Dowager, and not sending him offended the Empress Dowager. "Mother, no matter what Empress Dowager I am, I will also learn from my mother," Meng Wenxian said, coquettishly holding Mrs. Lu's arm. Okay, I'll take you over tomorrow." Mrs. Lu had a severe headache. On the second day, Meng Wenyao began to learn etiquette from her grandmother. Noble daughters from various families have taught etiquette since childhood, so Meng Wenyao learned it very easily. Miss Meng has done very well in walking, sitting, and sleeping. Now let's brew tea. After listening to the praise, Meng Wenyao was very happy. Getting the recognition of Li Mama was indirectly equivalent to getting the approval of the Empress Dowager. In the future, with the help of the Empress Dowager, she would be able to compete with the noble concubine. Ruxin walked in with a set of tea utensils and whispered to Meng Wenyao, "Miss, Madam and Second Miss are here. I've seen my sister, I've seen my grandmother." A beautiful voice sounded from behind, and Meng Wenyao instantly felt like a venomous snake climbing onto her back. In her previous life, this younger sister married the Prince of Anjouan as the Empress Dowager. The Prince of Anjouan, with the support of the father and son of the Meng family, secured his position as crown prince, but later felt that the military power held by the Meng family was a threat. This younger sister, together with Mrs. Lu, wrote a letter to her father and brother, explaining how Meng Wenyao died tragically. The father and son of the Meng family returned to Beijing without an edict and happened to fall into a trap. "Have you met your mother? What's up with your second sister?" Turning around, Meng Wenyao gracefully bowed and then looked at Meng Wenxian with a cold expression in her eyes. Chapter 4. The Inhumane Emperor 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Sister, my sister also wants to learn etiquette from Mammy." Meng Wenxian opened her mouth in a delicate and weak way. Anyone who sees it thinks it is an innocent white lotus. Meng Wenyao sneered inwardly and said calmly, "Why don't you ask Grandma to go back to the palace and ask the Empress Dowager if she can take you to class?" Meng Wenxian's face stiffened as she calculated that her sister would definitely show affection in front of outsiders, so she shamelessly came over. Unexpectedly, Meng Wenyao refused her outright, while Li Mama beside her kept bowing her head to drink tea without any intention of answering. Madame Lu didn't feel embarrassed at all and shamelessly said, "Mama, one sister is also a teacher, and it's not difficult for both of them to work together. What do you think, Mama Li?" As he spoke, he took off a jade bracelet of excellent condition on his hand and handed it to Grandma Li. Ignoring Mrs. Lu's movements, Li Mama spoke calmly, "Madam, even the Empress Dowager's orders need to be changed. I didn't know that the Empress Dowager was going to obey her orders." "No, no," Grandma misunderstood, Mrs. Lu stuttered and explained. Meng Wenyao smiled and helped explain, "Yes, Grandma misunderstood. Mother respects the Empress Dowager the most. She even personally copied Buddhist scriptures for her before. How could she not listen to her instructions?" Upon hearing Meng Wenyao's support, Mrs. Lu nodded in agreement and said yes. "Well, I really misunderstood, madam. So please ask madam to copy the Great General Sutra 10 more times, and I will take it back to the palace to show it to the Empress Dowager." After listening to these words, Lady Lu was so shocked that she almost sat on the ground. 10 times, it seemed like a classic, so her hands were useless. Seeing Meng Wenxian beside her, who was full of anger, Meng Wenyao was in a good mood and smiled, "My sister and mother are easy to leave. I won't send them away." The two of them left silently, and Meng Wenyao continued to study with the grandmother, as if the previous episode did not exist. After a day of study, Li Mama was very satisfied with Meng Wenyao's performance and was willing to give more guidance. "Miss is doing very well today. As the head of the household, she must be decisive in her actions and not break the rules casually." Upon hearing the praise, Meng Wenyao was certainly very happy, but what was wrong with her feeling? As the housewife, isn't she going to the palace? Not being the head of the family. Are you going to the palace to become the queen? Meng Wenyao felt a little drumbeat in her heart and cautiously probed, "I don't know why the Empress Dowager asked you, the old lady, to come and teach me." Li Mama felt that there was no need to hide this from Wenyao and smiled, for the sake of Princeton. With an unchanged expression, Meng Wenyao escorted Li Mama back to her room. "Sitting on a chair and daydreaming when I came back, how could I have anything to do with the Prince of An County? The Prince of An County was an enemy in his previous life, so how could I marry him? The Empress Dowager knew about that dream, how could she randomly point out the list of Mandarin ducks? If not, she must find a way to refuse the Prince of An County." Meng Wenyao waved her hand and called Rui over, instructing, "The Empress Dowager has asked my grandmother to teach me so that I can marry Princeton. I don't know what Princeton likes, so go and inquire." After Rui left, Meng Wenyao instructed Ruxin, "Follow Rui and see where she has gone." In her previous life, Meng Wenxian must have planned to marry the Prince of Anjouan early on. Perhaps at this time, their mother and daughter were silently planning. Sure enough, Rui took a blind turn and ran over to secretly tell Meng Wenxian. After learning the news, Meng Wenxian wept and went to find Mrs. Lu. "Mother, the Princess of An County can only be me. Who did the Empress Dowager listen to? She actually thought of marrying her sister to the Prince of An County. Mother, please think of a way." Mrs. Lu was also surprised when she heard this. She and her daughter had already planned to give Wenyao to Wei Quan as a concubine, in order to curry favor with Wei Guifei. At that time, Meng Wenxian will have the beautiful words of a noble consort. As the legitimate daughter of General Meng, marrying the Prince of Anjouan will not be a natural outcome. Who knew that an Empress Dowager had been killed halfway, but the Empress Dowager did not curry favor on her side, and the Prince of Anjouan's side would also be in trouble. How could this be done? Meng Wenxian ignored and shook Lady Lu's arm, crying uncontrollably. No one could steal her Prince of An County. She is the Princess of An County, the future Crown Princess, and the Empress Dowager of the motherland. All right, don't shake any more, let Wei Nyang think carefully. Madame Lu's head began to ache again. Meng Wenxian stopped crying and her eyes turned, "Mother, let's take our sister to the Wei mansion tonight while she's asleep." "Nonsense, the Empress Dowager's people are still in front of you. Don't act recklessly." After scolding her daughter, Lady Lu also felt that the matter was urgent and needed to quickly send Meng Wenyao out, otherwise it would be too late. "Madam, There will be a banquet in the Wei mansion in 3 days. How about you bring 2 young ladies over and leave the young lady there without realizing it? The Empress Dowager won't blame you then, will she? Madame Lu's eyes lit up and she pulled on Granny's shirt to quietly plan. At this moment, in the palace. After criticizing the folding for a whole day, the emperor was tired and his waist was painful and his arms were sore. Eunuch Xiadizi tidied up the folding while suggesting to the emperor has been tired for a whole day. Do you want to send a lady over to loosen the emperor's muscles and bones? The emperor has been childless for many years, and a few years ago, he made an effort to show favor to his queen. However, in the past 2 years, he has not entered the palace much and has completely given up his plan to have a child. The Empress Dowager was extremely anxious and often stuffed people onto the dragon bed. Without any success, she ordered the eunuchs around the emperor to frequently remind him to go to the harem. No matter how the eunuchs express or hint, the emperor is completely indifferent, and everyone gradually doesn't take it to heart. Every day is just a routine advice. Has a new member been added to the palace? The emperor spoke leisurely and his relaxed tone startled Xiao. On weekdays, advising the emperor to go to the harem is often ignored or looked down upon by the emperor. Is the emperor's reaction today planning to go to the harem? I haven't heard of any newcomers coming in, should I go and inquire? Xiadizi finished trembling and looked up at the emperor, realizing that he wasn't angry. Immediately ran out to inquire. The eunuch of Jing Shifang heard that the emperor asked if there were any new people, and pulled Xiadizi to ask, what does the emperor mean? Do you want a new person? There are many people in the palace that the emperor has not seen before. Why don't I find someone to send over as a new one? Xiao shook his head like a tambourine and said urgently, don't deceive your majesty. Since there are no new people, I will answer honestly. You can ask the Empress Dowager and Empress Dowager if you want to select some new people to come in. The eunuch of the Jing Shifang saw the rows of gray-green headed signs and sighed, Dukta, please clarify what your majesty means. If I choose a new person first, your majesty has no intention of favoring them, wouldn't it be harmful to them? Dukta didn't want to listen anymore and said, what does it mean to harm someone? They all voluntarily go to the palace. They all want to be empresses, but they can't win over the emperor. It's their poor service. How can we blame the emperor for delaying them? Humph. Dukta calmly returned to the Funing Hall and cautiously bent down to report to the emperor, there have been no new members entering the harem recently. How many people should be arranged to enter the palace by the Imperial Household Department? Chapter 5. The Inhumane Emperor 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing that there were no new members, the emperor was taken aback. That day at Fahua Temple, the Meng family girl said she had dreamed of a dragon in her arms. Surprisingly, the Empress Dowager did not allow the Meng family girl to enter the palace. Go and inquire about what General Meng's eldest daughter is doing. Xiao was taken aback and immediately thought of who it was. That day, he and the emperor also went to Fahua Temple and heard about the Meng family's daughter Meng Long's pregnancy. After the emperor returned to the palace, there was no response. Xiao thought the emperor had not taken it to heart, so he was waiting for the Empress Dowager to bring the person over. The Empress Dowager did not send the person over. Is this urgent for the emperor? Xiao chuckled inwardly and withdrew to order people to inquire. In less than an hour, Xiadizi learned about everything about Meng Wenyao and nervously walked into the Funing Hall, meeting the emperor's sharp gaze. Unconsciously, he knelt down. I heard from people that the Empress Dowager sent a guide to teach Lady Meng the court etiquette, and also said that she would marry Prince An in the future. After finishing speaking, Xiadizi lowered his head and dared not move. Is the Empress Dowager completely abandoning the emperor? Knowing that Meng's daughter Meng Long was in her arms and did not send her to the emperor's dragon bed, she actually wanted to marry Prince Anjuan. Xiadizi felt wronged for the emperor. The father of the Prince of Anjouan was the eldest son of the Empress Dowager, and the emperor was the youngest son of the Empress Dowager. In those days, the prince fought fiercely, and he narrowly escaped death before ascending to the throne. In recent years, the imperial attendant mother has been extremely filial, treating her nephew Prince Anjouan like a biological son. If no prince is born, the emperor intends to pass on the throne to Prince Anjouan. Now that the emperor has a chance to have her own child, the Empress Dowager didn't think of the emperor first. Little Detzi doesn't know what the emperor thinks, but he feels cold-hearted anyway. After a while, there was no response from the emperor. Xiao Detzi tentatively shouted, "Your Majesty. Let's go down." The emperor's voice revealed a strong sense of exhaustion. In the Prince of Anjouan's mansion, the Prince of Anjouan and several noble sons had just returned from a horse race when the counselor Mr. Ji ran all the way to his side. "Prince Jun, it is said that the Empress Dowager has assigned a guidance nanny to General Meng's house. The Prince Jun is about to do good." "General Meng." The Prince of Anjouan's mind wandered around and suddenly said, "General Meng, who controls 500,000 troops and horses in northern Xinjiang." Mr. Ji stroked his goatee and said with a smile, "It is this person. He is the first military general in the court, and he can be His Highness's father-in-law. In the future, His Highness will ascend to the throne, and the court will be stable. The Prince of Anjouan has been rolling out of the royal family since childhood. He knows his uncle, the current emperor, although he loves him very much, he is also on guard against him. In these years, the emperor has not given birth to any children, and everyone has always assumed that the Prince of An County will definitely be adopted by the emperor and will become a great treasure in the future." The Prince of Anjouan was also aware of this matter in his heart. In order to prevent the emperor from being wary of him too early, he never contacted the courtiers much, nor did he cultivate personal influence. He only ate and drank with the aristocratic children, becoming an ambitious royal prince. Now suddenly having a powerful father-in-law, Prince An was both excited and a little uneasy. "Do you mean Empress Dowager or Emperor? If the emperor is also willing for him to marry the Meng family, will it determine the position of his heir? If it's just the Empress Dowager's intention, then if he really intermarries with the Meng family, will the emperor feel that he has a rebellious intention? In my opinion, the emperor has been on the throne for 10 years, and there has never been a woman pregnant in the harem. The Empress Dowager no longer holds any hope of being able to have a great-grandson. Now, she may want to have a great-grandson as soon as possible, which is why she chose such a marriage for you, the princess. After all, the world will eventually belong to the princess." When the Prince of Anjouan was young, he heard that the emperor had no children, and he felt very uncomfortable because his father had died early. He treated the emperor like his biological father. "I really hope the emperor has his own children, and he also wants to have younger brothers and sisters." When he grew up and had his own royal mansion and strategist outside, he gradually realized that having no children was the best for the emperor, otherwise he would always be a royal prince. The Heavenly Lord listened to his plea. In recent years, there hasn't been a hen laying eggs in the harem. Thinking of this, the Prince of Anjouan would wake up with a smile in his dream. As for the throne, it will always be his, and it's not urgent yet. We can't let the imperial uncle fear him early on. First, you can inquire about this Miss Meng from the Meng family. When I have time, I'll go to the palace and ask whose meaning this is. If Uncle Huang doesn't agree, I'll think of quitting. The Prince of Anjouan is still very cautious when it comes to offending the emperor. In the past, 10 princes competed for the throne, and only the emperor survived in the end. When it comes to how kind and soft-hearted the emperor is, he is the first to not believe it. Although the reputation of benevolence and filial piety has been well established since the emperor ascended the throne, those old officials left by the previous dynasty who opposed the emperor were demoted and stripped of their families. Of course, this was not done by the emperor himself. The unified charge of those people is that they offended the noble consort. Wei Guifei is a commoner woman. If it weren't for the support of the emperor behind her back, would she dare to reach into the court? The noble consort was favored by the emperor for 5 years and made great contributions in eliminating dissidents. In the end, everyone felt that the noble consort had bewitched the harem and caused chaos in the court. And the emperor became a wise ruler of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, kindness, and filial piety. Thinking of these, the Prince of Anjouan felt that the emperor played a good hand. When he ascends to the throne, he will also find a favored concubine to act as an eagle's claw for himself, help him eliminate those court officials he dislikes, and also help him carry the blame. 3 days later, at the Wei Mansion banquet, Lady Lu brought Wenyao and Wenxian to the Wei Mansion. Wei Guifei used to be just a palace maid serving the emperor, and her family was poor and destitute. In the past, the prince fought fiercely for the throne, and the current Empress Dowager was once thrown into a cold palace. The emperor has been framed multiple times in the palace, and it is said that it was accompanied by Wei Guifei who never gave up. After the emperor ascended the throne, he firmly opposed public opinion and appointed the humble palace maid Wei as a noble consort. The noble consort favored the harem alone, and even the empress was deposed for offending the noble consort. The Wei family began to ascend to heaven. Whoever flatters the noble consort can immediately rise to the top. If they offend the noble consort, they can immediately be imprisoned. Wei Quan, the nephew of the noble consort, is a tyrant in the capital. As long as she is interested in a woman, she must get her hands on it. Meng Wenyao knew that this trip was dangerous, but Mrs. Lu has been shrinking in the mansion for the past few days. She can't force Mrs. Lu to take action even if she doesn't go out. She was a bit curious about how Mrs. Lu planned to frame her. Meng Wenyao has been socializing with Mrs. Lu for a while, but nothing has happened. Feeling bored, he lowered his head and ordered Ruxin a few words. Ruxin walked for a while and came back, holding a flower in his hand. "Miss, this is a gift from the Prince of An County." Glancing at Meng Wenxian in a daze, Meng Wenyao happily took the flower and shyly expressed that she would also give a gift to Prince An later. "Sister, do you think this flower looks good? Do you like it or not? If you like it, I'll give it to you. Just a flower, I'm not rare." Chapter 6. The Inhumane Emperor 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's not uncommon to get angry like that. Let's see how long you can hold on. Everyone listened to the play step by step, had lunch, and the maids rushed in to start serving dishes. Suddenly, a maid accidentally spilled the vegetable soup and landed it on Meng Wenyao's clothes without bias. The good play has come on, what a familiar scene. Get up and follow the maid of the Wei family to change clothes, and walk to a side room. Meng Wenyao stood at the door, whispering to Rui. Ruxin said, "When the Prince of Anjouan comes over, you go and pick a flower. I'll treat it as a gift and give it to the Prince of Anjouan. Miss Meng, please come in." The maid of Wei Mansion was afraid that Meng Wenyao would run away, so she quickly pushed open the door and let someone in. Meng Wenyao walked slowly in, and there was a strange fragrance in the room. Fortunately, she had already taken the 100 poisons non-invading pill before, so she didn't have to be afraid, whether it was the enchanting fragrance or the aphrodisiac. Turning to see the maid from Wei Mansion, Meng Wenyao smiled and said, "Miss, my maid has gone to help me get my clothes. I'm worried she won't be able to find her here. Can you help me pick her up?" The maid looked at Meng Wenyao and hesitated to speak. "Then I'll go first." "Miss Meng, don't run around here." Meng Wenyao couldn't help but sneer in her heart and said, "My clothes are all dirty, where else can I go?" The maid of Wei Mansion left with her front foot, while Meng Wenyao left with her back foot. Should she stay here and be a fool? She walked to a corner and stood there quietly waiting for Rui to appear. Sure enough, within a while, Rui brought Meng Wenxian over and said as she walked, "Miss Air is right ahead." Ruxin said, "The Prince of Anjouan will come to this room to find Miss De." Upon hearing the news of Prince An, Meng Wenxian couldn't think of anything in her mind, only thinking that she couldn't let her sister and prince share the same room and must stop them. Watching Meng Wenxian enter the room, Meng Wenyao happily left. She wanted to find Ruxin, change her clothes well, and come back to enjoy this wonderful play. Walking through a rockery, Meng Wenyao heard two people whispering. "Is that really the emperor?" a little maid asked. "Yes, I accompanied my wife into the palace. I've seen the emperor before, so I'm sure I can't be wrong," replied the other maid. "The emperor has come to our mansion, why hasn't the noble consort come back?" "I don't know either." As these two maids walked away, Meng Wenyao walked lightly and saw a man fishing in the shadows by the water in the distance. The emperor, who didn't even go to the harem, actually appeared in the Wei mansion. It's really fate. Meng Wenyao pretended to be lost, walked step by step towards the water's edge, and then walked non-stop into the water. "Miss, don't walk inside anymore, come back quickly." A male and female voice rang in her ear, and Meng Wenyao continued walking into the water as if she hadn't heard it. The water went up to the ankles, down to the calves, down to the knees, and suddenly someone grabbed it. "Miss, stop." A low and steady voice sounded, and Meng Wenyao slowly turned her head, and a drop of tears fell. "Young master, don't save me. Saving me is harming me." The man who grabbed her had eyebrows and starry eyes, a high nose bridge, and a handsome face filled with worries. This man is too good looking, which really affects Meng Wenyao's acting skills. Turning his head fiercely and continuing to walk into the water, the person behind him waved his long arm and carried Meng Wenyao ashore. Why did the girl seek death? The man tightly embraced Meng Wenyao with his long arms, and his slender body and tight muscles made Meng Wenyao feel dizzy. Meng Wenyao blushed and looked up with a mournful smile, saying, "My stepmother doesn't like it. She blocked my sister's path. Shouldn't she deserve to die? Where's your father?" The man's deep voice had a soothing effect. "Far away at the border, I haven't returned for years." At this point, Meng Wenyao seemed to feel hopeless in life, and her heart ached and she suddenly rushed into the water again. The man's figure moved and he tightly hugged Meng Wenyao. Seeing her beautiful and pale face, he felt extremely sorry in his heart. This kind of Meng family girl was beyond his expectations. She was not as ugly, rude, and foolish as he had imagined, but rather a rare and stunning beauty. He wanted to say a few words of comfort and looked down to see his delicate body in his arms, crying softly and trembling. Suddenly, his Adam's apple rolled and there was a strange reaction somewhere in his body. This reaction is so unfamiliar and strange, is it just that emotional place? Meng Wenyao had not seen the man speak for a long time, and it was not appropriate for them to hold him like this. They exerted a slight force and wanted to push the man away. "Thank you very much for your help, young master. I don't know how to address you. If there is a chance, I will definitely repay you one or two." Unexpectedly, the man not only didn't let go, but also hugged even tighter. "How to repay? Do we promise each other with our own lives?" Meng Wenyao looked up at the man. With such a teasing tone, was it the emperor who had not entered the harem for several years? She couldn't have mistaken the person, it was too scary. With a sudden force, she escaped from the man's embrace, turned around, and ran away quickly. The man looked at his empty embrace with a helpless smile and shook his head, saying, "Did you scare her?" Xiao Detzi approached cautiously and said, "Do you want me to inquire about the young lady from which family?" "There is a stepmother and sister, and my father hasn't returned to the border for several years. Who else could there be if it weren't for the Miss Meng of the Meng family?" Xiao Detzi saw the rare smile on the emperor's face and boldly said, "Oh my, that's really congratulations to the emperor. Since ancient times, heroes have saved beauty, and the emperor has saved Miss Meng. Miss Meng must have been thinking of the emperor and that dream in her heart. Such a thought is truly a great fate. The emperor came to the Wei mansion today to inquire about the Miss Meng from the Meng family coming and wanting to come and see if the daughter of the generals can still catch his eye. I didn't expect the appearance of the Meng family daughter, and they had such a fate. The emperor began to imagine the scene of the Meng family daughter entering the palace. Speaking of Meng Wenyao, after running recklessly for a while, they finally found Ruxin and changed clothes in a secluded room. The two of them went to the room where Meng Wenxian was. From a distance, she saw people all over the yard. Ru Xian went to inquire, and a girl whispered, "Miss Meng is changing clothes inside." Wei Quan, the eldest son of the Wei family, accidentally entered. Mrs. Lu is blocking someone to give an explanation. Squeezing forward, Meng Wenyao saw that the door was tightly closed, and Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Wei were standing at the door talking. Madame Lu pretended to wipe away her tears and said, "My poor daughter, why is her life so bad? Her mother left shortly after she was born, and now she's about to leave the cabinet, and her innocence will be ruined in your family. How can I explain this to our general? Isn't this a plain statement? Is the person inside the Meng family Mississippi?" Upon hearing this, Meng Wenyao finally understood. It turned out that Lady Lu had not yet entered the room and had no idea who was inside, so she started splashing dirty water on her. Madame Wei pretended to apologize beside her, saying, "Madame Lu, please calm down. This is a misunderstanding. There were many guests today and there was a lot of drinking, so it's inevitable that something unexpected happened. We don't want this to happen either. Since the incident has already happened, our Wei family will definitely give you an explanation. However, our whole child is already married, so we can only entrust Chu Lingai to be a noble concubine." Chapter 7. The Inhumane Emperor 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Some people in the crowd said that Lady Lu was also not easy. She personally negotiated with others for her daughter, but who would have met Wei Quan? Having a noble concubine would be good, at least she entered the Wei family's door. Some people also say that it may be Miss Meng's intentional seduction, which has affected the reputation of Miss Meng's second daughter. It is rare that Lady Lu has a kind heart and even planned a position as a noble concubine for her. As if everyone in the audience wanted to roll up their sleeves and slap each other, Meng Wenyao gently shook her head and slowly walked through the crowd to the front. She put on the sweetest smile she could make and naively asked, "Mother, why are you crying? Why are you here?" Mrs. Lu looked as if she had seen a ghost and pointed at Meng Wenyao as she repeatedly retreated until she bumped into the door before stopping. Meng Wenyao looked puzzled and asked, "Mother, where am I when I'm not here?" Mrs. Wei, who was standing beside her, was also a bit surprised. She glanced at Meng Wenyao and said to Lu Furen, "There was a misunderstanding, it seems like it was all a misunderstanding." Madame Lu also turned her mind and put on a smile, explaining to everyone, "I was in a hurry just now. My daughter is okay, it's okay." When everyone heard this, they realized it was just a misunderstanding and planned to leave one after another. "Mother, why hasn't my younger sister gone missing?" Meng Wenyao suddenly exclaimed in a loud voice as she left like this. Upon hearing the sound, everyone stopped their steps and turned their heads together to look at Madame Lu and Madame Wei. Ruxin, taking advantage of the lack of attention, had already walked to the door and suddenly forcefully pushed it open to enter. Madame Lu stood at the door, wanting to go in and see if her daughter was there, but also afraid that others would follow in and see her. It was not a matter of anxiously entering or getting stuck at the door. Suddenly, a scream came. "Ah! Miss Eyre, why are you here?" Upon hearing Ru Xian's scream, Meng Wenyao smiled knowingly. What does it mean to lift a stone and hit her own foot? Today is considered to have seen it. "Mother, go inside and see what's wrong with your sister." Meng Wenyao pushed Mrs. Lu inside, and the people behind also followed in. The clothes in the room were messy, Wei Gongzi was sleeping soundly, and the second miss of the Meng family was half naked, huddled in the corner of the bed trembling. Madame Lu fainted at the same time, and her daughter is finished this time. A farce came to an end, and in half a day, it spread throughout the capital. How did the second miss of the Meng family collude with Wei Quan, and how did Lady Lu block the door and fight for a position as a noble concubine from Lady Wei? What a shame, bah! Returning to the mansion, Grandma Hua scolded while applauding and cheering. As expected, the wicked still need to be sharpened. I heard that Miss Eyre was in Madame's yard, shouting and refusing to marry Wei Quan. She can't do it if she doesn't want to. Now that her innocence is ruined, besides Wei Quan, who else can she marry? It's truly unforgivable for her own wrongdoing. Having solved the disaster, Meng Wenyao wanted to rest for a while. On this day, she was exhausted from the battle of wits and bravery. Miss, someone from the palace is announcing an edict, asking Miss to come and listen to it. Upon hearing the shout, Meng Wenyao was frightened and immediately stood up. Isn't this the Empress Dowager's wedding decree? Meng Wenyao has been resolved here, and the Prince of Anjouan is still fine. If the Empress Dowager issues an order now, wouldn't she be unable to escape? How about letting Meng Wenxian marry instead? While thinking about countermeasures, he quickly walked to the main hall. Madame Lu and Meng Wenxian were also present, both of whom looked like frostbitten eggplants, looking like they had lost half of their lives. Unable to pay attention to the mother and daughter, Meng Wenyao knelt down obediently and waited for the edict to be announced. According to the emperor's decree, the eldest daughter of the Meng family was appointed by heaven to inherit the imperial edict. She is expected to cultivate her own moral character, maintain harmony in the palace, serve diligently, and continue her descendants. She will be honored as the Empress Dowager's kind edict and be registered as the Chen consort. She is hereby honored. The big stone in her heart finally landed, and Meng Wenyao calmly accepted the order. Madame Lu and Meng Wenxian followed and swept away the previous haze. They watched the play as if watching Meng Wenyao, but they didn't know that the emperor couldn't bear children. Entering the palace would be equivalent to wasting the latter half of their lives. Congratulations to sister, I wish her a speedy birth to a prince. As soon as Meng Wenxian finished speaking, a sharp and delicate duckling voice sounded. Dare! Concubine Chen is the empress of the emperor. How can you shout like your sister? Come on, clap. Immediately, a young eunuch came over and slapped Meng Wenxian to the ground. The eunuch smiled and said, Miss Meng, remember to call Lady Chen in the future. Meng Wenxian widened her eyes and tears fell silently. Today, she was in hell for a while, and 18 layers of hell for a while. Meng Wenyao walked forward and whispered in Meng Wenxian's ear, with my sister's good words, I will definitely give birth to a prince. I also wish my sister and Wei Gongzi peace and beauty. When you have time to satirize others, you don't think about what kind of life you will have in the future. After returning to the room and tidying up, Meng Wenyao will follow her father-in-law into the palace. Rui suddenly ran over, and her face had been beaten like a pig's head. It seems that Mrs. Lu already knew that Rui had spread false news about today's incident. Please take the servant with you, Mississippi. I dare not betray you again in the future. Grandma Hua is also aware of today's Rui's act of betraying her master. She spoke up and advised, Miss, don't worry. Keep Rui at home. This kind of rebellious servant, no matter how much the lady tortures her, is all her own fault. Ru Xian nodded desperately on the side, while Meng Wenyao looked down at Ru Yi from a high position. The noble concubine in the palace was in charge, and in the future, she would inevitably have to send heads to the enemy. It would be better to keep Ru Yi for her to practice. Since you have truly changed, I will give you another chance. If there is another time, I will never spare. Yes, thank you, Miss Xie. Rui kowtowed like pounding garlic, but Grandma Hua wanted to persuade her. Meng Wenyao comforted her and said, keep it for future use. After packing up his things, the master and 4 servants arrived at the imperial palace. Meng Wenyao was arranged to stay in the cold fragrance hall, which was not far or near the Funing Hall where the emperor was located. The decoration in the main hall was mediocre, and Meng Wenyao was slightly disappointed in her heart. Did today's scene of committing suicide by jumping into the river not arouse the emperor's sympathy? If it didn't arouse the emperor's sympathy, why was she in theft as a concubine? If it causes the emperor's pity, how come the place of residence is so cold? Did the emperor know about the dream she had at Fahua Temple? She was only admitted to the palace for the sake of her offspring. Meng Wenyao paced back and forth in the palace, unable to guess the emperor's thoughts, until outside he heard, "The emperor has arrived." Meng Wenyao squatted and bowed gracefully, dressed in a light blue smoky butterfly skirt that accentuated her snowy skin. Her body resembled a supporting willow, like a newly sprouted tender seedling, making people unable to help but cherish and love her. "Ai Fei, please get up quickly." The emperor strode forward and gently supported Meng Wenyao with his big hand. The two were very close together, and the emperor gently rubbed Meng Wenyao's small hand with his big hand. Meng Wenyao lowered her head, not that she was shy, she really didn't know what to say. She thought she was washed clean and sent directly to the emperor's dragon bed, but she didn't expect the emperor to come over now. Looking up slightly at the emperor, he was smiling at Meng Wenyao. "Ai Fei doesn't remember me. We just met this morning." Chapter 8. The Inhumane Emperor 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The emperor's deep voice came from the beginning. Meng Wenyao shook her head and shyly said, "When I was in the Wei mansion, I didn't know it was the emperor. I thought I had met a disciple." The emperor laughed heartily upon hearing this. It was the first time he had been called a disciple. Before, women used to pounce on him, but today he rarely takes the initiative. He was pushed away by a woman and even scared away. "It's really interesting. Did it scare you back then?" As the emperor spoke, his hand had already wrapped around Meng Wenyao's waist. Meng Wenyao's body stiffened and she tried to escape with a slight force. She looked at the emperor pleadingly and said, "I'm a bit afraid." Thinking of Meng Wenyao's startled and fleeing appearance in the morning, the emperor felt that he couldn't act too hastily and wanted to take it slowly, so he immediately let go. "Host, don't be afraid. Your task is to seduce the emperor, don't push it away." "Shut up, you system. Do you know what it means to refuse and welcome?" "Okay, you're willing to refuse and welcome." The emperor found a chair to sit down and planned to say a few common words to Meng Wenyao to cultivate a relationship. "Why are you jumping into the river today?" Immediately, Meng Wenyao put on a tearful expression and said wrongly, "The Empress Dowager has sent a guide to my concubine. I heard that she is going to marry my concubine to the Prince of An County. My mother originally wanted to marry my younger sister to the Prince of An County, so she has been displeased with my concubine and wants to get rid of her quickly. Today in the Wei mansion, I was led to the side room and found a strange fragrance in the room. Someone must have wanted to harm me. I was so scared that I ran away, hoping to avoid this attempt. I don't know how many more conspiracies there will be in the future." The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable it became. I thought it would be all for now. At least I could have kept a pure body. I didn't expect to be saved by the emperor. If it weren't for the emperor, I would have. The delicate beauty cried bitterly, tears rolling down like pearls. Even the cold-blooded man couldn't help but feel sympathy upon seeing this scene. The emperor hugged Meng Wenyao and helped her wipe away her tears while comforting her, saying, "From now on, everything belongs to me and I will never let you be bullied by anyone again. Your stepmother is so vicious. How dare you think of marrying your daughter to the Prince of An County? You really don't know what to do. How does Yao want to punish her?" How to punish? Meng Wenyao wants to break down Mrs. Lu in 8 pieces, but it's not possible yet. She had just entered the palace when she was showing her weakness and kindness, so she couldn't express her thoughts. Besides, there is no way to relieve hatred by directly harming Lady Lu. She wants Lady Lu to see her daughter with her own eyes, like Meng Wenyao in her previous life, being persecuted and killed step by step, in order to be very happy. Although my mother doesn't like my concubine, she is doing it for her own daughter. I understand her love for her son, let alone how could I meet His Majesty without her. I don't have time to thank her. The emperor looked at Meng Wenyao's gaze, so gentle that she could squeeze out the water. This woman is so beautiful and kind. How can such a delicate woman survive in this harem? He must take good care of her. You are too kind. How could you tolerate being bullied so much? Your sister, I won't agree with her marrying the Prince of Anjouan. It seems that the emperor doesn't know about Meng Wenxian yet, so let's add a handful of firewood. My younger sister was in the Wei mansion today and was accidentally bumped into by Wei Gongzi. Her innocence has been lost. I heard that the Wei family is willing to treat her as a noble concubine, but it seems that my mother and younger sister are not satisfied. The emperor snorted after hearing this and said, a woman with such cunning intentions would be cheaper to marry into the Wei family. Since she is not satisfied, I will give her a decree. Immediately, a eunuch brought a pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. In 15 minutes, a decree was sent to Meng Wenxian to marry Wei Quan as a concubine. Seeing this set of smooth and flowing operations, Meng Wenyao shouted inwardly, the imperial power is indeed invincible, and we must hold on to the emperor's thigh in the future. The emperor treated me so well that I don't even know how to repay him. Holding the soft and delicate body in his arms, the emperor's Adam's apple kept rolling and he swallowed saliva several times before suppressing the evil fire in his heart. In his youth, the princes fought fiercely for the throne, and both of his brothers were killed by the former emperor for teasing the palace concubine. He knew very well that it was not teasing the palace concubine, but being seduced and framed by the palace concubine, and he couldn't hold back before coming to justice. Because he had been seduced by palace concubines and maidens before, as well as someone adding aphrodisiacs to his diet. Thinking of his brother who had been executed, he endured excruciating pain every time and placed his body in ice water to alleviate the effects of aphrodisiacs. He successfully avoided the temptation of the palace concubine and the maiden, and did not have any relationship with any woman. His strong self-control allowed him to win the battle for the throne completely. He could finally confidently favor the palace consort with peace of mind, but unfortunately, when he saw a woman, he despised her and thought of the pain of being seduced by the palace consort and her beauty, soaking his body in ice water. No woman can arouse his interest, and of course, no man can arouse his interest. In order to conceal this secret, he had to pretend to only favor Empress Wei, in order to shift the fact that he could not favor his concubines. A few years later, he had no offspring, and from the court to the Empress Dowager, he crazily indulged himself in rain and dew. He had to pretend to favor one concubine after another to confuse the public's attention. Only he knew that many years had passed, and when he saw one woman after another on the dragon bed, he would recall the scene of being seduced time and time again. The eager gaze of those women, the artificial seduction, and the anxiety of wanting to eat him dry and wipe him clean all made him never want to see women again. Until today, when he met the Meng family's daughter, his pure eyes, the despair of wanting to jump into the river, and even the panic of escaping in the end, all aroused his desire for this woman. She was the only woman who didn't pounce, but instead wanted to escape, avoid, and push him away. Is it because of her refusal that he repeatedly wants to get close, possess, and have primitive impulses? I don't want to know how to repay Empress Dowager AI. Empress Dowager AI can promise each other with her own body. Meng Wenyao instinctively felt danger as her big hand, which was hot around her waist, became more and more forceful. She pushed the emperor away with force, widening the distance between the two. Your Majesty, have you not yet gone to pay respects to the Empress Dowager and the Empress Dowager? Her flushed face revealed her nervousness, and the emperor swallowed again, hoarsely saying, "It's not too late to go tomorrow." In the Changle Palace, the Empress Dowager heard that the emperor had conferred the title of Chen consort on the Meng family daughter, and was so shocked that the Buddha pearl almost fell to the ground. Why did the emperor suddenly seal the Meng family's daughter into the palace? Did he also know about her dream? Mother Kuai recalled the situation on that day. At that time, the abbot of Fahua Temple accompanied her and listened to the scriptures in the Sakyamuni hall. There seemed to be someone in the side hall. She didn't care about it at that time. Maybe the emperor was there at that time, so she also knew the dream of the Meng girls. Do you remember, Empress Dowager? Before the emperor ascended the throne, she was once framed and poisoned by the third prince. It was the poison that the abbot of Fahua Temple had detoxified. The emperor had a close relationship with the abbot of Fahua Temple, and the abbot told the emperor about the Meng family's daughter Meng Long's pregnancy, but it is unknown. Chapter 9. The Inhumane Emperor 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Empress Dowager suddenly remembered this past event. The emperor was still living in Fahua Temple for 3 months at that time, and it seems that the emperor already knew about the Meng family's daughter Meng Long's pregnancy. What do you mean by, the emperor? He directly conferred the title of concubine on the Meng family's daughter. Did he blame the AI family for not allowing the Meng family's daughter to enter the palace? Grandma Gui rolled her eyes in her heart, thinking that I had made it clear that Meng's daughter dreamed of a golden dragon in her arms and became pregnant. Your old man's mind has turned to the Prince of An County, still thinking of marrying him. Although she thought so in her heart, she couldn't say so on her lips. Grandma Gui comforted the Empress Dowager in a soft voice, saying, the Empress Dowager only sent someone to guide her over, without issuing a decree to marry the Prince of Anjouan. The emperor may not have thought that you left the Meng family daughter to the Prince of Anjouan. In the future, as long as you love Empress Chen more and show sincerity, hoping that he will give birth to a child for the emperor, just like how you have sent someone to the emperor's dragon bed in the past many years. The emperor is so filial that he will understand your hard work. After pondering for a while, the Empress Dowager also felt fortunate that she had not explicitly stated that the Meng family daughter should be married to the Prince of An County. Now, let's consider this matter as non-existent. You're right, that slut of the Wei family, who has been doting on the harem for so many years and still interfering in court politics in the previous dynasty. I really hope this Meng family girl has some skills to share the favor of the Wei family. You go to the Jiaofang Hall and knock on the Wei family. Grandma Gui was ordered to go to the Jiaofang Hall where Empress Wei resided. As the head of the Empress Dowager's palace, she still had some face in the palace and walked smoothly to the presence of Empress Wei. Wei Guifei was leisurely eating fruits, looking in a good mood. She gently said to Grandma Gui, why do you have time to come and sit in the Jiaofang Hall today? Grandma Gui looked puzzled. The noble consort was in charge of the affairs of the harem, and she should have known early on that the emperor had conferred the title of Chen consort. She didn't look angry at all. Yes, she must have thought that Meng's girls couldn't have children, that's why she's so confident. Returning to the Empress Dowager's words, a new Empress Chen has entered the palace. The Empress Dowager feels sorry for the new couple and specially asked the maidservants to come over and speak out. In the future, please be more tolerant of the new Empress Chen for the Empress Dowager's sake, and do not abuse or punish her like other palace concubines. Upon hearing this, Empress Wei put down the fruit and almost burst into laughter. Empress Chen had arrived in the palace, and the Empress Dowager couldn't wait to come and sow discord. Over the years, she has favored the harem alone. In order to share her favor, the Empress Dowager kept sending people to the emperor's dragon bed. As a result, no one could receive more favor than her. The Empress Dowager and even the ministers in the court thought that her beauty was a disaster, making the emperor unwilling to favor other concubines. In fact, she is the only one in this world who knows that the emperor cannot touch women, and it is in vain for the Empress Dowager to pass on so many people to the palace. Not to mention the new Empress Chen in the palace, only 10 new doji have arrived, and she doesn't have much to worry about. It's not that she doesn't take the concubines in the harem seriously, it's really that the emperor doesn't take these people seriously. With a coquettish smile, Wei Guifei spoke up and said, what else should I do in this palace? Just these few words are worth a visit by the mother herself. Let's not say that the Empress Dowager personally explained it. Even if the Empress Dowager doesn't explain it, I will treat Chen Fei well in this palace. I also hope that the emperor will give birth to a son soon. Grandma Gui was disdainful and wanted to say that when Empress Chen became pregnant, she would see if you could still laugh. Since the Empress Dowager is so knowledgeable, I will definitely go back and speak a few words of goodwill for her in front of the Empress Dowager, asking her to persuade the emperor and also come and see the Empress Dowager when I have time. The emperor favored his concubine a few years ago, but later began to enjoy both rain and dew. In the past 2 years, he has hardly entered the harem. Grandma Gui's words were clearly a satire on the loss of favor of the noble consort. Who knew that the noble consort didn't care at all, but still smiled coquettishly and said, "Thank you very much, Grandma." But it made Grandma Gui so angry that she almost couldn't stand steadily. After Grandma Gui left, the palace maid Xiang'er next to consort Gui came over and whispered in her ear, "I heard that consort Chen had just entered the palace, and the emperor went to see her. Madam, should we send someone to keep an eye on her?" The noble concubine waved her hand indifferently and said, "It's not a big deal for the emperor to just visit her, even if he hires her to serve in bed. When Chen Fei becomes pregnant one day, you can tell me no later." Xiang'er saw that the noble consort was so calm and carefree, and felt that the empress was truly the one who was once favored alone. She must have a winning weapon to attract the emperor. The noble consort has no magic weapon for victory, it's just that she is certain that the emperor will not touch any women. The women who once served as attendants were just unconscious and slept alone. They had no idea that they hadn't even touched the emperor's feet. It's strange if someone is pregnant. The noble consort found a comfortable position and continued to tilt her body to eat fruits. The harem was a stagnant pool, and whoever was willing to pounce would let them pounce. Compared to the tranquility of the noble consort, the in-county prince's mansion seemed to have exploded, with 4 or 5 strategists discussing together for an hour. Why did the emperor suddenly bestow a concubine? Why did the Empress Dowager choose the daughter of the Meng family for the prince in the first place? What does the emperor mean? Just a few days after the Empress Dowager sent a guide to the Meng mansion, the emperor ordered the enfeoffment of the consort. Is this aimed at the Empress Dowager or at the county prince? The more a strategist thought about it, the more afraid he became. Perhaps the emperor didn't like Princeton, so he directly took his fiancée A.E. Mr. G stroked his goatee and shook his head, saying, "Don't worry, the Empress Dowager only sent a nanny over and didn't issue an order to marry. Our county king doesn't know anything about it." Upon hearing this, the Prince of Anjouan felt scared. Fortunately, he didn't have time to go to the palace to inquire about the news. If he had run to the Empress Dowager without caring about the mansion and asked if she intended to marry the Meng family daughter to him, wouldn't he have been willing to take advantage of the emperor's desire to marry her? Fortunately, he has been busy playing these past 2 days and did not go to the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager. Sure enough, it's safer to eat, drink, and have fun. If he had a heart for it in the beginning, he would have kept a record with the emperor now. Mr. G is right. I don't know anything. The Empress Dowager and the emperor are both my elders, and I can only obey what they do. As a descendant of the royal family, he still carries the rules of life preservation on his back. Even if his fiancée A.E. is taken away by the emperor, he will offer it with both hands as if he is proud. After much discussion, everyone decided not to know anything about the emperor's enfeoffment of concubine Chen and to observe the changes. The sky slowly turned dark, and Meng Wenyao, under the care of the palace maids and Ruxin, was bathing in a bathtub while the emperor waited outside. Thinking about what was going to happen next, Meng Wenyao blushed and her heart beat. The emperor's gaze at her before was so red and fruity. Chapter 10. The Inhumane Emperor 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It doesn't look like a person who hasn't been to the harem for several years and has a clear mind and few desires. It seems that some rumors are unreliable. It is said outside that in the past, the emperor only favored Wei Guifei. In the future, we will also find opportunities to test and see if this rumor is true. Host, don't be nervous, this kind of thing will happen twice. Meng Wenyao rolled her eyes and said, "Are you familiar with this kind of thing?" "Miss, the water has cooled down, you should go out now." As the heart's voice sounded, Meng Wenyao realized that she had indeed been washing for a long time, and she didn't know if the emperor outside was in a hurry. The palace maid brought over a thin veil, and Meng Wenyao asked incredulously, "Is that all you need to wear?" The palace maid nodded, and Meng Wenyao wanted to faint in place. There was no difference between wearing this so-called garment and not wearing it. Wearing thin gauze, Meng Wenyao felt embarrassed to go out, so the palace maid had to take a robe and drape it over her. Wrapped tightly in her outer robe, Meng Wenyao moved lightly in lotus steps. As soon as she entered the inner room, a scorching gaze chased after her. The palace maids withdrew in unison, looking at the woman who was like a lotus in the water. The emperor felt dry and thirsty, so he picked up a teacup and took a few sips of tea. Washed up. Feeling too embarrassed to lift her head, Meng Wenyao lowered her head and felt embarrassed to speak. The emperor suddenly picked up Meng Wenyao, causing her to quickly embrace the emperor's neck. As soon as the hand reached out, the outer robe spread slightly, and the spring light inside was infinite, causing the emperor's eyes to turn red, and he stared straight at it without moving. Gently releasing the emperor's neck, Meng Wenyao clasped her outer robe with both hands and said awkwardly, "The emperor, quickly put down my concubine." The emperor carried Meng Wenyao to the bedside and sat down, placing her on his lap. He asked her vaguely, "Has Mama taught you how to serve in bed?" Looking up at the emperor, Meng Wenyao boldly said, "The emperor should personally teach me." One sentence once again caused the emperor's Adam's apple to roll. Since his accession to the throne, he has learned the matter of the intersection of yin and yang, whether it is in the picture book or in real person teaching, he is not very proficient. However, due to poor health, I have been unable to personally practice. This morning in Wei Mansion, holding Meng Wenyao for the first time, he felt the difference in that place, and now he deeply understands the clamor of primitive desires. At the Fa Hua temple, he did indeed listen to Meng Wenyao's dream, but at that time he felt some nonsense and did not take it to heart. Later, it was heard that the Empress Dowager had no intention of allowing Meng Wenyao into the palace, and he felt a little uncomfortable. In a fit of anger, he went to the Wei mansion to personally see this woman. Just before he could meet this woman, she was saved by him by chance. Holding her at the time made him suddenly have the urge to be a man. It seems that it's not that he's not good, it's that he doesn't like women who come rushing towards him, he only likes women who actively go hunting. "Are you afraid or not?" A low and hoarse voice sounded, and Meng Wenyao nodded shyly, then buried her head deep in the emperor's arms and whispered, "The emperor will cherish my concubine. I will definitely take good care of my concubine." The window curtain falls, blocking the infinite spring light. Hua Mama and Rushin Rui were guarding outside until the second half of the night, and there were occasional moans, sobs, and begging for mercy inside. They were so embarrassed that all three wanted to escape the scene. Grandma Hua was still a bit worried. The young lady's body was too weak, and the emperor's tireless struggles made her wonder if she could bear it. The next day when Meng Wenyao woke up, she felt like her whole body was scattered and couldn't help but complain to the system. "I've taken so many pills, why is my body still so restless?" Host, as I said yesterday, this kind of thing is one cycle of rebirth and 2 cycles of maturity. If you do it a few more times, your body will adapt. Meng Wenyao was speechless for a moment, ignoring the system, and was supported by Rushin to take a bath. Looking at the blue and purple all over her body, Meng Wenyao remembered last night when the emperor said he would love her well, but she was so rude in bed that she didn't look as gentle and refined at all, like a bandit. "I heard that the emperor hasn't been in the harem much for the past 2 years. I thought his health was not good. I didn't expect him to be so brave last night." If it weren't for her pretending to faint, I don't know when the emperor would have let her go. Ruxin walked over with a white porcelain bottle in her hand and blushed, saying, "This is the medicine that the emperor asked someone to bring over. They said it's for the empress to use." Looking at the blue and purple marks on her neck and body, Meng Wenyao stretched her neck and asked Ruxin to help her apply medicine. Her face blushed like cooked shrimp, and she said in a mosquito-like voice, "It was rubbed elsewhere." Meng Wenyao suddenly knew how to use this medicine and awkwardly sank her body into the water, afraid to raise her head. After bathing and changing clothes, Meng Wenyao asked the palace maids to take her to the Empress Dowager's Changle Palace to pay her respects. Before she arrived at the entrance of the Changle Palace, she could see Li Mama waiting from a distance. Meeting acquaintances was particularly heartwarming. Guided by Li Mama, Meng Wenyao felt relieved and respectfully bowed to the Empress Dowager, who was exceptionally kind. This child is easily likable at first glance. No wonder the emperor only invited you in. In the future, you must serve the emperor well and not disappoint his kindness. Meng Wenyao replied with a dignified and virtuous tone, "The Empress Dowager has greatly praised you. Being able to serve the emperor is a blessing for me, and I will definitely cherish it greatly." What a heartbreaking child. Grandma Goe, quickly bring me my set of ruby headbands. They are brightly colored and perfect for young people like you to wear. I didn't expect the Empress Dowager to be so generous, and Meng Wenyao was even more respectful. "Thank you, Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager really loves my concubine. My concubine's mother passed away early, and when I saw Empress Dowager, I felt as if I had met my mother," Meng Wenyao said, pretending to press the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. Since taking on this system task, Meng Wenyao feels that her acting skills have skyrocketed. The Empress Dowager's mother used to want to marry her to her grandson, but now she has become the woman of the Empress Dowager's son, and it is unknown how the Empress Dowager views her. Since she appears so kind on the surface, Meng Wenyao naturally cooperates with the moving scenes in her performance. The Empress Dowager was even more fond of Meng Wenyao's asceticism, and carefully advised, "You are young and have just arrived at the palace. You don't understand many rules. If you suffer any injustice, don't endure it. Tell the AI family that they will vent their anger on your behalf. Thank you for your kindness, madam. She is really kind." Meng Wenyao's eyes were slightly red, and tears of emotion were about to flow as the sound of the emperor's arrival echoed outside. Just as she was about to turn around and kneel before bowing, a pair of big hands supported her and took her little hand. The Empress Dowager and Grandma Goe smiled at each other, indicating that the Empress Dowager was about to face a formidable opponent. "The emperor is in such a hurry to come over. Are you afraid that I might eat your heart's flesh and not succeed?" The Empress Dowager's teasing made Meng Wenyao too shy to look up. The emperor replied without changing his color, "I made the Empress Dowager laugh at me. My son just came over to greet her. Kneeling down and begging for treasure to add bookshelves, love you L. Red Heart."